The Vrexian warship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, trailing smoke and desperation. Korvath, commander of the elite battle pack, knew his vessel wouldn't survive another jump. The quantum core was fractured, and his 3 cubs, too young to fight, too precious to lose, muled in their containment pods as alarms shrieked through the corridors. He had one choice that defied every instinct bred into his species over 10,000 years of conquest. He would leave them with humans. The idea was madness. Humans were prey species, soft, weak, illogically emotional. But they had also done something no other race had accomplished in the galaxy's recorded history. They had survived first contact with the Vrexian Empire and forced a ceasefire. Not through superior weapons or shields, but through something Korvath's tactical processors couldn't quantify. His ship crashed in a remote agricultural zone. Through the cracked viewport, he saw a solitary structure, a farmhouse, primitive but sturdy. And standing in the field illuminated by the burning wreckage was a human female in military attire, her hand resting on a sidearm. Captain Mira Solen had retired from active duty 3 years ago, but old instincts died hard. She approached the wreckage with caution, her weapon drawn but not aimed. What emerged from the smoke made her breath catch. The creature stood nearly 3 meters tall, covered in obsidian scales that reflected the firelight like liquid metal. 6 eyes arranged in a hexagonal pattern focused on her with predatory intensity. Its 4 arms ended in claws that could shred titanium. This was a Vrexian warrior, the same species that had torn through 17 colonial worlds before humanity had barely managed to negotiate peace. But it wasn't attacking. Instead, it carried 3 small creatures against its chest, each no larger than a house cat mewling pitifully. The warrior's translator device crackled to life. Human. My vessel fails. I must rejoin my fleet. These are my cubs. They will die in the void. The words came mechanically, but something in those alien eyes conveyed urgency. Your species survived us. Perhaps you can survive them. Before Mira could respond, Korvath placed the cubs on the ground between them. They tumbled over each other, their scales still soft and iridescent, their claws barely formed. One looked up at Mira with eyes that held no malice, only fear and confusion. Wait, Mira started, but the warrior was already moving back toward his ship. How do I even feed them? What do they need? Korvath paused. They are Vrexian. They need only meat and strength. Teach them to kill. Make them warriors. With that, he activated some kind of emergency beacon, and a shimmering field surrounded him as a rescue pod launched from the dying ship, carrying him into the stars. Mira stood alone in her field with 3 alien predator cubs that would someday grow into living weapons. She looked down at them. They looked up at her. Well, she said softly, holstering her weapon. Let's get you inside. 3 months later, Korvath's fleet received clearance to pass through the neutral zone. His tactical mission was reconnaissance, but his personal mission was singular: retrieve his cubs or confirm their deaths. He had left them with prey. Surely they had either been destroyed by human fear or had starved without proper warrior training. He tracked the beacon he'd implanted in each cub, expecting to find graves or research facilities. Instead, the signal led him back to that same farmhouse. What he saw through his ship's observation array made no sense. His cubs, now substantially larger, their scales hardening into proper armor, were in the field. But they weren't hunting or fighting. They were playing. One chased a spherical object while the human female laughed. Another was being gently groomed, the human checking its scales for parasites and cleaning between the plating with careful fingers. The third was sleeping on a cushioned platform in the sun, its breathing slow and content. Korvath's analytical mind stuttered. This was wrong. Cubs should be training in combat simulations, learning to tear and rend, being starved to sharpen their hunting instincts. He transported down, materializing in the field with a flicker of light. Captain Mira Solen didn't reach for her weapon this time. She simply smiled, wiping dirt from her hands. Thought you might come back. The cubs recognized their progenitor's scent immediately. But instead of assuming combat-ready positions as properly trained warriors should, they bounded toward him with undignified enthusiasm, making chirping sounds of joy. "What have you done to them?" Korvath demanded, his translator barely keeping pace with his confusion. "They are not warriors, they are. Happy?" Mira offered. She walked over and scratched behind the auditory ridge of the largest cub, who leaned into the touch with obvious pleasure. "Yeah, they're healthy, well-fed, and socialized. I've been teaching them problem-solving, cooperation, and emotional regulation. They are battle predators, apex species. They should not." Korvath gestured at the scene before him. "This is not our way." Mira met his 6 eyes with her 2, unflinching. "No, it's our way. And your way lost 17 worlds before you figured out you couldn't beat us. Want to know why we survived? It wasn't our weapons." She knelt down, and all 3 cubs gathered around her, allowing themselves to be held. "It's because we understand something you don't. Strength isn't just about killing, it's about protecting, building, caring. Your cubs are stronger now than they would have been in any combat creche. They trust, they bond, they think." One of the cubs, the smallest, approached Korvath and pressed its head against his lower arm, not in submission, in affection. For the first time in his warrior's life, Korvath felt something his species had genetically suppressed for millennia. His tactical processors identified it after a moment's analysis. Wonder. "You have made them weak," he said, but the conviction was gone from his voice. "I've made them whole," Mira replied. "The question is, are you brave enough to see the difference?" Korvath stood in the field for a long time, watching his cubs play under Earth's sun, cared for by a species his people had dismissed as fragile. He thought of his empire built on conquest and fear. He thought of humanity, built on something his translators still couldn't properly define. Perhaps, he considered, strength had more than one definition after all. When he finally departed, he didn't take the cubs. He requested regular updates instead, and in his reports to the Vrexian High Command he included an annotation that would perplex military analysts for years. "Human resilience may not be biological. Recommend further study of cultural warfare applications." But in his private logs he wrote something different. "Today I learned that predators who care are more dangerous than predators who kill. Humanity's weapon is not their technology. It is their capacity to turn enemies into family. We are not prepared for this." Back on Earth, Captain Mira Solon watched the stars, 3 alien cubs sleeping peacefully around her, and smiled. Humanity hadn't conquered the Vrexians with weapons. They'd conquered them with compassion, and that perhaps was the most terrifying weapon of all.